Oh, greetings, Titans. Welcome to the EV Supermarket Charging Price Guide. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. And we're looking at the mess that is supermarket EV charging. Here we go. It seemed a really simple task. Find out the prices charged at the major supermarkets, which is charging which price and what brand charger units do they have. But the good old days have long since gone, and we live now in a very different world. See, once a supermarket like Tesco would simply buy up a plot of land, apply for planning permission. When they got it and it was the right time, they would build a store. Simple. So what's changed? Well, the key thing that has changed is OPM. No, not opium, that's a very different video altogether, but other people's money, OPM. The old way needed you to spend your own money or go and borrow it, and that was a limiting factor to your growth. So the first move was to allow someone else to pay for some of the costs. Here you need to think retail parks. The core infrastructure, the site, the access, the roads, parking, possibly even power supply, that was all provided and paid for by the retail park owner or operator. The supermarket simply comes along, builds their supermarket, and operates it. Well, this has since expanded dramatically, since the problem that arose there was that the retail park owner also had limited money. So we need to move up another step. Now, everyone now gets the money from someone else, OPM, and the one that's got plenty of money is the banks and the private equity funds, the investment funds, the pension funds, and a myriad of other financial organisations. They got oodles of money. Well, these have built up over the last few decades to actually own and run the world. A bank or investment fund might launch a derivative. A derivative, by the way, simply means it's fictitious, doesn't have any assets of its own, it's entirely a made-up entity. And they might call it a green investment fund. Well, the bank then bundles all of its green investments, this is the loans to green companies already made, and then calls that the green investment fund, then convinces investors to invest in it. And these investors might also be investors of their own and funds of their own, in their own right, like a pension fund. And investors need a profit or return, so the banks invest in things that do provide them a positive return. But of course, they've already made their money by lending money to the operators to build whatever it is they're investing in. So what they invest in is merely a further profit source to them. Well, getting back to the supermarkets, most now are no longer funded by themselves. That's long since gone. Usually begins with a bank or investment fund thinking up a new fund. Could be retail park investment fund. And to make it attractive to investors, they call it a green retail park investment fund. But of course, the banks know nothing about building and operating retail parks, so they just employ a company which does. And they hand them a bundle of money, and they then have a look at that, and they get some specialists in who actually do the building and the groundwork. But they also go out to retailers like shops, cafes, fast food and supermarkets who are offered the opportunity to operate a store built for them for a rather hefty rent, which is the profit that the banks will ultimately get, and the retail park. Well, the more retailers you can get crammed in, the greater the profit potential, and it's here the conflict arises when it comes to EV public charging. Or take Bradley Stoke near Bristol. It's a retail park. They have a supermarket, a massive Tesco Extra, and immediately outside in the car park is an installation of chargers operated by Osprey. Well, they didn't buy the site, they didn't pay much towards it, they didn't set up the site, but they do pay a very hefty rent for operating their chargers there. So the simple question of what chargers do Tesco operate depends on whether they own the site, whether they have any say in the chargers they install, whether they've decided to operate their own chargers and operate as a charge point operator. And that depends a lot on if the retail park operator has already done a deal with another CPO. Well, this results in a supermarket, say Sainsbury's, in one location having Kenpower chargers operated by Osprey in their car park, while another Sainsbury's, not far away, might have bought their own site. They operate their own location. They've set up their own charger network. They've bought in Kenn Power chargers directly, and they operate them as their own network. And they can then choose whatever price they want to sell that electricity at. These retail parks might also have their own parking restrictions that might limit your time there. A fast charger with a 90-minute time limit is hardly worth the effort if your EV is limited to less than 11 kilowatts. It really does get complicated. So, unfortunately, there are no distinct answers here. But in general, as a quick rundown, let's start with Aldi. They tend to buy their chargers from Shell Recharge and operate their own network. Many are actually totally free to use. Yeah, even today, August 2024, Aldi has free chargers at some of its newer stores and some of the older ones. But it's limited. It is at a few locations. It's usually only fast charging, but at the fastest rate of 22 kilowatts, and often time limited. But if you have an EV that can charge at 22 kilowatt, and these are rare, you could get up to 100 miles in a single session. That's free. You don't get any cheaper than that. Lidl's going through a transformation at the moment. They've just decided to become their own CPO with fast chargers priced at 42p and rapid chargers at 62p. You'll still find some of the older Pod Point ones. Tesco also operate both with very similar prices. And again, older stores, in this case, might have Shell Recharge units at much higher prices. But we also now have Tesco, at least at this stage, becoming their own CPO at some of their locations where they can, operating fast chargers at around 40p and rapids and ultra rapids at 62 to 69p. Oh, by the way, don't forget, if you buy a Vauxhall EV, you'll get a year's free charging at Tesco's at the moment. Asda's undergoing a transition with their owner, the Issa brothers, seeming to be having an internal power struggle, with one ripping out EV chargers, while the other one actually owns EV Point, now called EV on the Move, as is installing ultra-rapid chargers at 64 pence. Sainsbury's has hit the headlines, but the number of stores installing their own chargers is limited. Where available, the price is quoted as a maximum of 75 pence, implying they can and do charge less at some locations. Morrison's has had many stores bought out by MFG, who are installing new chargers, ultra-rapid, but at 79p. Interesting, in some locations actually closing the petrol forecourts to make way for EV chargers. They've seen the future. So you might go to your local Sainsbury to use their chargers, only to find the retail park operator has already done a deal with Apple Green, and that's what they have there. Also, you might be quoted a price on ZapMap, only to find if you actually go and plug in, it's very much less. So my general advice is to do some proper research of your own before settling on a regular location at which you are going to charge if you cannot charge at home. This video might give you some guidance, but you do actually need to go out there and try a few. As a general rule, if you can charge at home really cheap, but only use public chargers when out on the road, you need to weigh up the time taken to find cheaper charging versus the convenience of top-up charging whenever and wherever you stop. I have used Shell Recharge for this very reason. It was really handy, but never to totally fill my battery, that would be silly. Only ever to get me to some decent chargers that are very much cheaper, but further along my route, which would have been out of range otherwise. Well, the situation with EV public chargers in supermarkets is in very early days, so it's not consistent, it changes regularly. Some are still seeing EV charging as a profit source, but the latest move by GridServe and Instavolt in offering much cheaper discounted rates will soon bring that to an end. The market will settle down, price will continue to fall, and it'll come down to a much more reasonable price in time. And I'm predicting that's going to be in the 40 to 50 pence range per kilowatt hour, with even cheaper deals, off-peak rates at various locations. Ultimately, have patience. I'm Dave. And thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please click the like button. Now, we know a lot of you haven't subscribed. You watch the channel regularly, but don't subscribe. It doesn't make a lot of difference to you. It's totally free to subscribe, but it makes a huge difference to a young channel like ours. So if you would please hit the subscribe button, and if you want to click the notification bell, that means we can notify you every time we launch a video. Hope you've enjoyed this one. Hope you found some use in it. I'm Dave.